Hey, what you reading for?
Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel where I talk about books, literary, horror, classics, and contemporary. I am a bit under the weather today, but that is not going to stop me from doing my November reading wrap-up. I read 10 books in November. I want to go through those books very quickly with you. There was one 5-star read and one 1-star read. I want to keep this channel positive, so I will talk about the 1-star book towards the end of the video. But I will close with the last book I read, which is called Monstero, and it has me baffled as to a current trend in fiction, a trend I don't really understand, a trend that has me asking questions about myself, about society at large. And I have some theories I'm going to share with you, but I also want to open it up and hopefully get your feedback, and hopefully you can help me wrap my head around this trend in contemporary fiction that has me a bit confused. We'll skip the intro sequence and jump right to it, and we'll start off at the beginning. And I began the month by reading a viewer recommendation, and I read All's Well by Mona Awad, and I loved it. I love this writer. I think she is one of the more exciting and interesting writers working today. This was my second experience with her work after Bunny. She only has 4 novels out, so I'm going to read the other 2 novels in December. So you can look forward to my ranking of the Mona Awad novels sometime in the next few weeks. But I just love this author. In fact, I made a video called I Love This Author, where I talk about this book and Bunny. After this positive experience, I read A Dream of Kings by Davis Grubb, and this was a 5-star read for me. This was amazing. This is a historical fiction set in the south of the US, the few years leading up to and then into the Civil War. And I talk about this book in the video 4 amazing authors that are never talked about on BookTube. So I had a very positive experience with his work, again, not a surprise. And I followed that up with Nick Cutter, Acolyte. And this is a dystopian, tense page-turner with a few disturbing scenes, as you would expect from a Nick Cutter book. And I really liked this one, and it made it onto my video of the dystopian pyramid. So after Nick Cutter, I went on a roll where I read 3 Clive Barker novellas. Clive Barker is probably my favorite author of all time. And I felt like I had read everything that he'd put out except for these 3 novellas that were what I consider just to be money grabs from the publisher. Like, Clive Barker hadn't put out anything new, so they went back through his old catalog and found stuff that he had never published. So that was my expectation going into it, but I figured I've read everything else he's put out. I might as well read this stuff too. So I started off with Tortured Souls, which is a novelette that you would get if you buy these figurines, Tortured Souls. I don't have the figurines, I just got this novella at the library. And I quite liked it, actually. It did feel like a skeleton version of a Clive Barker epic fantasy, but it was still pretty good, you know. If it didn't have the name Clive Barker on it, I would be more excited about it. But with the name Clive Barker, I set the expectations very high. And this is not one of his better books, but it was still enjoyable. After that, I read Infernal Parade, which is another novelette that was sold along with action figures. And this one deals with some morbid circus parade or something like that. There is really no story here, it's just the introduction of a few characters. So it didn't really do much for me. And it's still nice to come across Clive Barker's writing, even if it's not some of the best that he's ever done. I still love Clive Barker, so I'll love anything he puts out. So after the Infernal Parade, I read The Adventures of Mr. Maximilian Bacchus and His Traveling Circus. And this is a novella that Clive Barker wrote when he was very young. Wrote it back in the 70s. It was never published because he would go on to write much better things like the Books of Blood. Sometime in the late 2000s, 2009, I believe, he hadn't put out anything in a while, so the publishers they put this out. And it's not bad. I mean, it's kind of a colorful circus that goes to the edge of the world to put on a show, and somebody from their troupe falls in love with a princess, and the princess is captured, so they have to go rescue her. It's that kind of zany adventure for younger readers. It's similar in tone to The Thief of Always, though not quite as good. But I enjoyed this story. I enjoyed it for what it is. Again, if it hadn't had the Clive Barker name on it, I would probably be giving it much more praise. But yeah, it's not bad. Next up, more Davis Grubb. I read The Watchmen. And this is a novel set in a small town in Virginia in the 1940s. And the sheriff of this small town, he has 2 teenage daughters. And these daughters, they have their gentleman callers who court them. And this sheriff, this father, he is overprotective. And I really enjoyed this one too, though not quite to the same extent as A Dream of Kings, but still really good. The writing is gorgeous. After that, I read The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. Sun Also Rises. I think that is an excellent title. And that is the only positive thing I will say about this book. This is not a good book. In fact, it's a very bad book. Basically, we have spoiled young Americans and British people living in Paris, and they go from cafe to pub to cafe, and they order drinks, and the writer tells us what they order and how much it costs, and then the characters, they say to each other, oh, you're drunk, yes, I'm drunk, and then it just repeats and repeats, and finally they go off to Spain, and the writer tells us how much everything costs, how much the hotels cost, how much the cost to hire the car, and they go to lunch and they tell us what they order and how much it costs, and that's pretty much it. That's really all there is going on in this book. This is the storytelling, the writing, and the characters are completely devoid of any color. This is a bad book. It's funny when you read things about Ernest Hemingway, they always talk about what an exciting life he led, which may be true. But what is not exciting are the books that he wrote. Not at all. After that, I went back to Davis Grubb for a short story collection called 12 Stories of Suspense and the Supernatural. This is from 1964. And these were macabre morality tales. It did not resonate with me as much as his novels do. So it was a bit of a letdown, but it was a short, breezy read, but it didn't really do much for me, ultimately. And lastly, I read Monstero by Gerardo Samano Cordova from 2023. And this is a book that had been getting quite a buzz. There are many booktubers that I've seen that have raved about this book. And so I wanted to see what the buzz was about, and I decided to check it out. And I failed to connect with this. Just complete failure. I didn't hate it, but it's going to be hard for me to get excited about this book. What we have is a couple. They have a son, and he dies at a young age, and they're just grief-ridden. And then the wife, she takes a part of this the dead child. She keeps for herself. You know, like some people keep a lock of hair. She keeps something of more substance, and then that thing grows into a creature. So that's pretty much the premise of the story, which there are some interesting things going on, but this book is it skims the surface on everything it touches. For example, there's one passage, it's maybe just a few lines, where the woman, the wife in the relationship, she sees a performance by a performance artist, and she says, oh, that would be fun to be a performance artist. And then we cut to decades later where she is a famous performance artist. So we don't really get any kind of build up into that. We don't explore what that does to her life or anything. In a similar sense, the husband, the loss of the child, it creates a rift in the couple. Cut to a few decades later, and he's getting married to a man. There's no explanation as to how that came about, what the implications are in their lives or anything. Everything just glosses over the surface of some interesting things, but it never explores them. This book is written in first person. It's first person narrator, but it has multiple POVs. So it has 4 different first person narrators going on. Now, this is a style of storytelling that I've always associated with romance writing. Romance books are often written like this. In fact, I work as a ghostwriter, and this is more often than not the instructions I'm given by the client. They'll send me an outline, let's say first person narrator, back and forth between the two people in the couple. But this is for romance. For other genres, like literary fiction, which I think is what Monstero is going for, it's not a type of storytelling that I've come across often. I think the first time I came across multiple first-person narrators in a work outside of romance, I think the first time was with Gillian Flynn and her second book, Dark Places. And that was 12 years ago? So not that long ago. I don't think I'd come across it before. Maybe Valley of the Dolls does that from the 1960s, which is not literary fiction. It's more like almost a romance. It's more gossipy drama. But it is rare. I remember when I was reading that Gillian Flynn, Dark Places, I liked it. I was thinking, oh, this is strange to see this type of multiple POVs in something other than romance. But I liked it. But that wasn't literary fiction either. That was kind of a bestseller style thriller mystery, which I liked. Here with Monstero, I think we're going for something more like literary fiction, maybe even literary horror. The first person narrator, the change in POVs did not work on me at all. It did not help I found the whole book to be quite superficial, but each time we switched POVs, we're back to the surface again, you know? And I don't know why I am seeing this style of storytelling come up more and more and more outside of romance. I mean, it has to be because readers are resonating with it. Readers want this. That's why the publishers, that's why the writers keep putting it out. Why do readers want this? What does this say about our society? What are we turning into? I'm not suggesting that it's a bad narrative technique. It might have its advantages. It definitely has its disadvantages, which came through with Monstero. When I'm reading a novel, I want a novel experience. I want something that is quite immersive. And the shift of in POVs that rips you from the story, it has you restart, recalibrate. So it serves as an impediment actually to an immersive experience. At least for me it does. I don't know why Monstero was written with multiple POVs. I think it detracted from the story. I think I remember Shirley Jackson, like one of her biggest hits was Bird's Nest. I think that was from the late 50s, mid 50s. And that was a big hit, and that was multiple POVs. Was it first person? No. It was third person narrator, and then it shifted towards first person. That's a weird shift, but it works. That's a good book. 20 or 30 years ago, I think this type of storytelling outside of romance, I think that would have been rejected by publishers. So what are you, crazy? This isn't a romance book. Write it in the third person, in one POV. Give us an immersive experience. We're not getting that anymore. This is what I'm noticing. It could just be confirmation bias. You know, it could be also that I hated The Sun Also Rises so much that it destroyed the reading experience for the next few books I'd read. I didn't hate Monstero. I felt like it was a wasted opportunity because it does set up an very interesting premise, but it just stays on the surface, and then the shift in POVs detracts. I'm not sure why the modern reader wants this. Do we not want an immersive experience? We prefer to stay on the surface, but we want to look at the surface from various different angles. We prefer that experience than one deep dive. I don't know. It works on me sometimes. I think Catriona Ward has pulled it off. I think Gillian Flynn pulled it off. What do you guys think of this multiple first-person narrators in works outside of romance? Is this a trend that you have noticed in the last 10, 20 years? Or is this something that's always been there that I just haven't noticed? I don't think so. I mean, maybe we could find the one or two examples from the 20th century, but there are not that many, I don't think. But there, in the 21st century, lots of examples. And why do you think that is? What has happened to us as a society that we are asking for this? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? It's probably neither. There must be a reason to it, and I want to find out what that reason is. Do you have any experience with the books I read in November? Have you read Davis Grubb yet? I look forward to connecting with you in the comment section. Thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, and thank you for watching. I'll see you at the next video.